Slurpy dirt, my G's. How are you doing? I hope you guys are all doing well. Today is a really exciting day because I've got two oranges in front of me. And you know what that means? It means that I'm going to throw them behind me. At the same time, you're going to press subscribe. So do that. That was exciting, wasn't it? Anyway, today I've got a nasty Neurofunk REESE bass, which I think you guys are going to like. And it's a little bit of a classic Neurofunk kind of REESE, but it's got a little bit of a twist on it. And I'm going to show you how I made it in just a moment. Also, if you wouldn't mind, you can also check out the links down below to my preset packs, join my Discord as well via Patreon, and just generally leave a comment down below saying that you like it when I throw fruit around my room. So that's very exciting. Anyway, let's get into today's video.
The Parables of Face Plant.
Alright then guys, so on this beautiful REESE that we've got here today, we have a bit of a natural movement that we're going to build in the voicing originally, and we're going to use only the wavetables that come with Faceplant already, so anyone can create it. You don't need a specific sample or anything. And yeah, I can drop this on Discord if you guys want, but you can feel free to just recreate it with me here. And yeah, we've got two main LFO movements. So we've got like a slow up and down LFO, which is going to we're going to use to put a little bit of a longer life into some of the parameters, which is important. And then we've got a faster LFO, which is putting in like a subtle rhythm into the sound. And we're going to use this mostly with the distortion to provide that little extra rhythm that makes it interesting. And then we've also got like a special effect where we're going to get a bit more sort of stuttery as we play higher notes in the REESE. So we're going to have this effect where it sort of goes a bit faster at the higher notes, but this is done manually ourselves. So this is not like a effect from extra detuning. This is going to be, we're going to create this effect ourselves. So let's get into it and start off with the voicing.
Listen.
So the basic idea is we're going to get two sort of wavetables that have some harmonics in, like sort of triangle, like saw wave kind of sounds. We're going to detune those guys together. Then we're going to slam in a sine wave with them to give that bass that was missing in them. And we're going to sort of crush that all together with distortion. And then we're going to add in like another extra sub bass underneath that's going to bypass all of that distortion. So we've got a clean sub underneath as well. And then we're going to add in a little bit of noise as well. But the important idea is having that sine wave that we're going to cram in to the saw waves and distort it all together. That's going to give that main kind of REESE sound. So first off, what I've got here is I've gone for just the classic wavetables on Faceplant and the sync window triangle. So we're going to use two instances of this. And so down here at -12, and I've got my first modulation, which is the LFO, and we're going to just have a slow up and down, and I'll track this to the frame, so it's going to cycle through that sort of sync window wavetable. And we do the same thing again on a second one, but this one's at -12.5, so it's detuned from the first one a little bit. So this is where we already have that classic detuned REESE saw movement in to begin with. So we're starting off with the basics. And again, we're going up and down on the wavetable, but it's a slightly different position. So they're a little bit, they're a little bit different from each other. And then, yes, like I said, next we're going to add in a sine wave, and this is going to be we're going to push this into the saw waves, well, the sync windows in the post-processing in the distortion in a moment. But yeah, getting that bassiness in that we were lacking, and it's down at -24. And then we've got another little bit of noise here. Really small amount of noise, about 2%. And there's a little filter that comes after it to take out all the low end. And then, like I mentioned, we've got one more sine wave that's going to bypass all of our effects and go straight into the master. Another one at -24. And I've really turned this one up higher to 200% here. Okay, so for those of you who may have noticed, there's also a slight bit of frequency modulation happening. And that is that our first saw wave here is going into the second one. And that's just, being dragged to the left a little bit. And we've also got our sine wave down here is going into this top saw wave here. So imagine the sine wave goes into one of the saws and one of the saws goes into the other one. And the idea is basically just to get a slightly more interesting timbre from everything, slightly FMing with each other. They kind of blend together a bit more and you get some slightly extra tones out of it. So that's just the idea there. And we've got one more little modulation to add in already. And that's just going to be used mostly in the effects. But there's one part where it comes on in the voicing already. And that is to modulate the phase amount. So where this kind of sine wave goes into the saw wave over here, just got a little bit of movement already on this sort of ramp down. So you can hear this dum 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 dum, and it's also a little bit on the volume of the noise, so you can kind of hear that as well here. Just a little bit. Dum dum dum. So we've got this extra sort of faster rhythm already coming in. And so next up, we're going to just quickly chuck on the global unison mode, and it's going to be set to frequency stack, and we're going to turn the range all the way down -100. I'm going to keep the blend all the way up and add a little bit of stereo width here. And now we're just unisoning everything together in this interesting way that the frequency stack unison operates. So that's very exciting. Anyway, that's the main part of the voicing done, but it's going to start to get a lot more interesting when we add in the effects. But the idea was just that we choose the right ingredients, like you're cooking a nice meal and you need to choose all the right things to start off with. When you're a good chef, you already know how things are going to be a lot different later, but you also know what ingredients you've got to start with. And so a detuned saw, two saw waves, one detuning from the other one, giving that classic REESE signature tone. Nice sine wave, which we're going to smash into that together. So it's going to distort it together to create an interesting kind of combination. And then another super sub bass sine wave underneath to provide that bass layer as well. And yeah, so let's move on to the effects. So we're going to start off with the most interesting effect, and this is going to be the one that we are applying to the whole sound as it pitches up the keyboard. So essentially what we've got is we've got a ring mod, which I've showed you guys before how I like to use it to give a stuttering kind of effect to the sound. And when you have the frequency down really low, turn the bias up, you get this kind of effect. It starts to really flutter the sound, is how I would describe it. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to have less of a flutter at the lower notes and more at the higher notes, right? So right down here, you don't hear it as much. Then up here, you see the mix comes up on the effect and it starts to activate the flutter more. And so all I've done to control that mix is use a note modulation here, and then just track the mix to it and also the frequency. So it goes up a little bit higher. The frequency will go up a little bit with a higher note, and that will make it slightly faster on each one as well. So the speed kind of goes a little bit quicker the higher you go up. And yeah, how I've done this note thing here is basically you can control the range. So I've done the range really low to 12 notes. Then I found the kind of bass note that I'm playing at, which is this kind of A sharp, and I want that to be sort of near the bottom. So if I wanted it all the way at the bottom, I would have it on A sharp, and then the mix would be here at 0. But I wanted it to have a little bit of movement in already, so I just changed that to a G. And then when I play a higher note, you see we have a higher value on this note section here, and that's turning the mix up a lot, you know. And yeah, I've turned the mix up to like 100%, and then just used like the range here, designed it so that I found like a good balance where I had like, you know, not too much crazy fluttering, but not too little when I hit my A either. So just kind of balancing like the range so that I can allow that effect to like sit within like a certain level. So that's like the main and coolest effect. But now we got a bunch of other like enhancing sound design effects. So we've got the distortion, the sine one here, and these two distortions, this one and the phase distortion, are going to be tracked to this LFO, and they're going to give this extra like pumping rhythm that I was talking about earlier, like our secondary kind of movement. So you really hear it when I add the phase distortion. You know, this first one is a little bit more subtle. It's kind of just a general purpose distortion. Shout out to general purpose. Anyway, this phase distortion, you really hear that effect because the drive is kind of pretty much all the way off. And then that's being introduced up and down on the LFO. And the tone is all the way down. And it's going all the way up and back again on the LFO. So it's doing like sort of a filter kind of sweep, you know? And so one thing that Phase Plant lacks in terms of its like nice sounding filters, I would say it makes up for a little bit with the phase distortion. And you know, by having the tone and modulating the tone on there, it's almost like you've got a filtered distortion. So that's really cool. Little bit of spread on both of these. Never going too heavy with the spread, because if I go too stereo, then there's no turning back. But if I just put a little bit of stereo in here and there, then I get a nicely slowly layered stereo bass overall. And yes, of course, we want a stereo bass because it's much more enveloping. The safe part is just to have, you know, it's very powerful in the mono, but it also has stereo information, so it's the best of both, you know. Anyway. Yeah, if you still get confused, just book yourself in for a mentorship session, and I'll clear things up with you one-on-one. Anyway, we got another little effect here, another ring mod, and basically this has got the self modulator on, which is a bit of a different one I don't use too often. Just turned the bias up and the rectify up and the mix all the way up. And it just sort of amplified the sound a little bit more. That's all I could really say, is it kind of just boosted the volume in a nice way. A little bit of a high-end boost here. And then I've got a little bit of filtering going on. And this is going on my slow up and down LFO here. So it really sculpts out like a lot of the kind of mid-range. So yeah, it changes the sound quite a lot. And you could argue that it takes away some of the power, but it's already a very enveloping, overpowering sound with a lot of frequencies, you know, in play. So in this case, you know, I don't think it really was bad to take out a little bit of that low mid-range power there, just to give the sound a bit more of a shape. And then lastly, but not leastly, is a fantastic snap heap little effect, which is basically adding in like a nice natural convolution reverb, taking out all of the low end. And this really like brings the sound home, because it needs a nice big space on it to give it that like intense, yeah, like larger than life, like kind of atmosphere to it. And so what I've done here is I've used the Falkland Palace. I love just because it's Falkland and that's cool. So I've just turned the mix up 100%, turned the low down all the way, dragged that pretty much all the way up to 600 Hertz, and also boosted the high end like 5 dB. So really, really sculpting out the low end, really boosting up the high end a bit on that reverb, and then turning the gain up on all of it, so it's really, really super loud, and then just mixing it in a small amount. So I want, because as I mix that in, essentially I'm losing a little bit of the original sound. So that's why if I had a really, really loud, big reverb, then I only have to mix it in like a little bit, and then I won't really lose too much volume overall. So there we go. I've got a nice little glide activated as well. So the polyphony is on 1 on legato. Legato is on it, and it's at 170. So we get a nice. Yeah, we get a nice effect when you start to go up and down the keyboard, like in big steps. You get that really like. Yeah, that when it's got sweeps up and down with that pitch glide, and you hear like that's when you hear the changing in the speed of our kind of flutter effect and the intensity of it at the same time as the notes gliding. That's where you get that really interesting kind of sweet spot where things just get really awesome. Anyway, I think that's basically everything. Sorry if that was a little bit of a drawn out instruction video. But I hope you guys learned a little bit from that. And yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, for checking out my content. As always, almost at 3,000 subscribers, which is absolutely unbelievable. Deep down, I don't know why anyone's watching this. I'm just a normal guy in a room just talking to himself about music. And for some reason, people are interested. So it always blows my mind. Anyway, I have a new song coming out on Friday called Parable. There's already a link to it, a little premiere, and hopefully you guys will check that out. As much as I love doing tutorials and teaching, deep down, how I got into it was my love for creating music, and it's great to have a platform to put my own music out as well, like on my own YouTube channel and things like that. So yeah, really appreciative for you guys just taking a listen. So thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your Sunday and have a good start to your week. Peace out. Much love. Don't do anything. Bye.
Too great.